Graceland Medical Center was a heaven for the wealthy. Its glimmering halls and luxurious private wards catered to the elite, and its staff was carefully selected to match the hospital's reputation. Among the nurses was Ella, a 26-year-old whose beauty was the talk of the hospital. Ella had a soft caramel complexion, large expressive eyes, and a smile that could warm the coldest heart. Patients, doctors, and even her colleagues couldn't help but admire her. Her presence alone seemed to brighten the day, especially for the rich VIP patients who filled the hospital's private suites. Ella, you are not just a nurse, you are a goddess, Mr. Thomas, one of the patients often told her. Thank you, sir, Ella would reply with a polite smile, avoiding any flirtation. Behind the admiration, however, lay envy. Her fellow nurses, especially the women, couldn't stand the constant attention she received. She thinks she's better than us, one nurse whispered to Ngozi during a lunch break. Ngozi chuckled. Don't mind them, Ella, she said later. They are just jealous because you are stunning and good at your job. Ella waved it off. She was used to the whispers and jealous stares. But what she wasn't used to were the increasingly bold advances from some of the wealthy male patients. One evening, as Ella made her rounds in the VIP ward, she noticed Mr. Thomas smiling at her from his bed. You look beautiful tonight, Ella, he said as she checked his chart. Thank you, sir. How are you feeling? She replied, keeping her tone professional. I would feel better if I could take you out for dinner, he said with a wink. Ella laughed nervously. You know that's against hospital policy, Mr. Thomas. He leaned closer, then said, what if I made it worth your while? Name your price. Ella froze, unsure of how to respond. She politely excused herself and left the room as her heart pounded. That night, she shared her encounter with Ngozi. Ngozi, he offered me money, just like that. Do I look like someone who would agree to such a thing? Ngozi smiled, then said, honestly, Ella, I think you should consider it. What? Are you serious? Ella asked, looking shocked. Listen, Ngozi said, lowering her voice. You are beautiful, and these men are rich. You know how much money you would make. We work so hard, and for what? A peanut salary that doesn't even cover half of our expenses. Ella shook her head. But it's wrong, Ngozi. It's against everything I believe in. Think about your family, Ella, Ngozi continued. Your siblings need school fees. Your parents are struggling. This could change everything for you. For days, Ella couldn't shake Ngozi's words from her mind. She thought about her parents, who were barely making ends meet in the village. Her younger brother, James, had just been sent home from school because of unpaid fees. Then, Mr. Thomas was discharged. As he prepared to leave, he handed Ella an envelope. Please, take this as a thank you, he said with a warm smile. Inside was a check of 500,000 naira and his complimentary card. Ella stared at it in disbelief. That's more than we earn in 3 months, Ngozi said when Ella showed her the check later. You see, I told you, this is your chance to make a better life for yourself. That night, Ella called Mr. Thomas and agreed to meet him at a luxury hotel. As she sat in the lavish suite, her nerves threatened to overwhelm her. Relax, Mr. Thomas said gently. You are safe here. They made out that night. Mr. Thomas was very pleased and complimented Ella at every given moment. When it was over, Ella felt a mix of relief and guilt. Then Mr. Thomas handed her another check. This time, it was 1 million naira. News of Ella's availability spread quickly among the wealthy patients at Gracefield. Chief Obi, a famous politician known for his extravagant lifestyle, was next. Ella, I've heard so much about you, he said one evening. Let me take care of you. Let me spoil you and give you everything you need. Chief Obi did not just offer money. He promised Ella a new life. True to his words, he rented a fully furnished apartment for her in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, paid for an all-expense vacation to Dubai, and gave her lots of money. Ella, you're living your dream, Ngozi said during one of her first visits to the apartment. Ella forced a smile. I don't know, Ngozi. Sometimes I feel like I've sold my soul. Don't be dramatic, Ngozi replied. You're helping your family, are you not? Ella tried to focus on the positives. She had paid off her siblings' school fees, sent money to her parents, and even started saving for the future. In the months that followed, it became a routine for Ella. She would work in the hospital during the day as the well-respected nurse Ella that everyone knew, and by night, she would be dressed in a short, skimpy, revealing dress, going from one luxury hotel room to the other as a call girl, satisfying the needs of her wealthy clients and going home with huge amounts of money every night. Ella's next client was Peter, a newly married man. He was charming and attentive, but his situation weighed heavily on Ella's conscience. They met in the hospital when Peter dropped his wife off for her antenatal appointment. Peter couldn't resist the sight of Ella and quickly looked for a means to get her phone number. That night, they met in a hotel and had a good time. Ella, you are different, Peter said after their encounter. You make me feel alive. She smiled faintly, but inside she felt empty. Each encounter chipped away at her sense of self-worth. Then came Engineer Ken, a man whose wife had given birth in their hospital, who could not resist the sight of Ella. Soon, they arranged to meet in a nearby hotel around the city. Ella got there a few minutes after Engineer Ken arrived, and as she stood in the hotel room, she felt a wave of disappointment. I'm sorry, I can't do this, she said, grabbing her bag and walking out of the room. Back in her apartment, Ella broke down in tears. The guilt, the shame, and the emptiness were too much to bear. She thought about the young girl who had started nursing school with dreams of helping others, and now she could no longer understand her mission. The next day, she confided in Ngozi. Ngozi, I can't do this anymore. Ngozi laughed. Ella, don't tell me you are backing out now. You've come too far. But at what cost? Ella asked. I've lost myself. This isn't who I want to be. I'm ashamed of myself. I can't believe how low I've brought myself, all for money. Few days later, Ella handed her resignation at Gracefield Hospital and returned to her hometown. Using the money she had saved, she opened a small clinic to provide affordable health care in her community. Her family was proud of her, and for the first time in years, Ella felt at peace and fulfilled. Though she couldn't undo the past, but she vowed to live a life of purpose and dignity, believing that Sometimes we lose our way, but it's never too late to find it again. Dick's story is a reflection on the consequences of compromising one's value for temporary gain. It serves as a reminder that true fulfillment comes from living a life of integrity and purpose.